بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وبارك وسلم أجمعين. Once again, welcome to the fifth session of our conference. We have three speakers for this session as well, and all the speakers will be speaking in English, so our translators will have quite some job to do for those who are translating into Arabic. And the session is entitled Seerah of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, from illumination to digitization. And the idea was that we tried to see how the material of the Seerah has been handled at various epochs of Islamic history. So for that we collected three papers. The first paper will be delivered by Ustaza Khadija Kubra. The title of her paper is Al-Amanat al-Muqaddasa, Sacred Trusts of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and his companions in the Topkapi Palace. Ustaza Khadija Kubra, she graduated from Fatih Sultan Muhammad Waqif University. Excuse me. She's a double major in Islamic Studies and Traditional Turkish Arts. She graduated in 2018 from the Traditional Turkish Arts Institute, where she specialized on Tadheeb with Dr. Mustafa Chalabi. Okay. And then she went on to pursue her master's degree in Islamic Studies in Islamic History and Art, from Marmara University, and she is now pursuing her PhD. And we all wish you well, ma'am. And we want to see you a doctor, inshallah, over the next 2-3 years. In Traditional Turkish Arts from Fatih Sultan Ahmed Waqif University. Her teacher is here as well. And according to our adab, I would have asked her teacher to start. But since she is, there's a historical progression in the topics that we are covering right now. So she'll be talking about the Amanat Muqaddasa in the Topkapi Palace, and we'll go on to Dr. Asia's paper next. So Asia, please.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. شكرا جزيلا لكل أساتذتنا وخاصة لدكتورة عائشة المناعي وأستاذ ذاكر أيضا. بسم الله أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه. My presentation will be in English, and I will be talking about the sacred trust, or Athar al-Nabi, or we can say Al-Amanat al-Mubaraka al-Muqaddasa in the Topkapi Palace, and their ornamentations as symbols of love and politics, and how can these sacred relics help us better understand the Seerah of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Studying the sacred relics, Al-Amanat al-Muqaddasa, in regards of Seerah is very important, because these relics are witnesses of the Seerah. They were actually there when the Seerah happened, and they're like bridges between our time and the time of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his companions. By studying them, we can understand the Seerah in a more solid way, and we can visualize the daily life of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and his companions. Also, I must state that these relics have been saved by Muslims through hundreds of years, mainly by two reasons: love and politics. The love they feel for their Prophet and his companions, and the political reason is that these sacred relics became the symbol of the Khilafah. That's why the Khalifas gave very great importance to these relics. And also, I don't know if you have been to the Topkapi Palace, if you have visited these Amanat al-Mubaraka al-Muqaddasa, but when you stand in front of them, you feel a closeness to their owners and their times, and you feel an enchantment around you. I've been there many times as a child, but when I was trying to choose a master's thesis subject, I went there, and while I was going around the museum, I thought, like, I truly comprehended that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam actually held this sword and fought with it, or Umar radiallahu anh, or Ali radiallahu anh. So this was a very enchanting moment for me, and because of this enchantment, because of this feeling, I studied the swords in this treasury, the Sacred Relics Treasury in Topkapı Palace. There are 28 swords there, but our time is limited, so I will continue. And these relics also hold great importance in regards of Islamic art history. I will talk about this too. This is the Topkapı Palace. It became a museum after Turkey became a republic. It was open to visitors in 1934. This is the plan of the museum. This is the door and the entrance, and this is the interior of the museum. There are many amanat, athar, belonging to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his companions in this treasury. But I will just talk about, like, give you some examples, show you some pictures, and move on. In Istanbul, there are two burdas, like hırka, cloaks of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. One is in the Topkapı Palace. It's called Hırka-i Saade, and the other one is Hırka-i Şerif. This is in a mosque in Fatih, the Hırka-i Şerif mosque. And this is the hırka of Fatima radiallahu anha from her dowry. This is her chest. This is a case of Hajar al-Aswad from the era of Sultan Abdul Majid. And this is the Quran belonging to Uthman radiallahu anh. This is the banner of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's the black banner that was called Okab. It's very old, so it's in pieces now, and it's covered in green atlas covers. This is the chest of the Sancak-ı Sharif. The banner in Turkish, we call it Sancak, and this is its chest. This is the sword belonging to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You can see the blade is original, and on it written is Abdullah, the name of father of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So, but the picture is not very good, so maybe you can see it in my paper. I will put it there, inshallah. Maybe Rasulullah inherited this sword from his father. This is another sword belonging to him. This is a sword belonging to Umar radiallahu anh. It's a very big and heavy sword. And this belongs to Ali radiallahu anh. Both of these swords were from the Benu Qaynuqa tribe, and it is said that they belonged to Rasulullah, and these Sahabis inherited these swords from him. And this is a sword belonging to Ali radiallahu anh, and this is Khalid bin Walid's sword. On the blade, his name is written. And so, as I said, there are many more examples. I hope one day you can go to Topkapı Palace and see them in person. Or in my paper, I talked about these in detail. As I said, studying these relics gives a more solid understanding of the Seerah, because the preservation of holy relics as an expression of love for Prophet Muhammad actually began when he was alive. The Sahabi would race in these situations. There are 3 reports that Salama owned Prophet Muhammad's hairs, and again, because of the time, I won't go into details of these narrations, but I will just tell you that if you want to search this subject, you can in the Bukhari, in Al-Jami al-Sahih by Bukhari, there's a special chapter called the chapter of the hair, shoes, head covering, and other items used by Prophet Muhammad and continued to be used by the Khalifas after him, and the hairs obtained by the companions and others after his death. It's a very long title. but you can search in this bab, this chapter. Also, we know that Ali radiallahu anh had one of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam's sword, and he met with Miswara bin Mahwara in Medina. He wanted to buy the sword from him, and he told that he was going to guard it with his life, but Ali radiallahu anh didn't sell it to him. And also, Anas radiallahu anh reports that Abu Talha was the first to take some of Rasulullah's hairs when he got shaved, his beard. And after the time of the four Khalifas, these relics became symbols of the Khilafah. As we all know, Ka'b bin Zuhair composed a poem to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he was known by this poem, Qasidatul Burda. And this Burda actually became the symbol of the Khilafah. And Umar bin Abdul Aziz, he was a Khalifa known by his reverence towards these relics. He had a special place built in his room, and when his guests came, he would show the relics to them. But with the Mongol invasion, the Abbasid Khalifas had to run away to Egypt, and they took the Al-Amanat Mubarakah with them to Egypt, and the Mamluk period began. And in Egypt today, you can find some examples for the sacred relics in two places, Mosque Athar Nabi and the Hussein Mosque. And after the conquer of Egypt, the sacred relics were transferred to Istanbul, mainly for two reasons. Again, because of the spiritual value the Ottoman sultans put in these relics, and also for political reasons, because Yavuz Sultan Selim wanted to express that the new Khilafah was now in Istanbul, and he was the Khalifa. And also, while these relics were being transferred, in the ship, Yavuz Sultan Selim ordered to begin a recitation of the Quran, and this recitation never stopped, and still today in this chamber you can hear the Quran being recited. Like the Hafiz come and recite the Quran next to the relics. You can see a picture, and the Khirqa-i Saadat is there, as you can see. This chamber in the Ottoman time was called Hasbada and Al-Ghurfa Al-Khassa, or the special room, and the officials that worked here were the highest ranked officials in the palace, and they were closest to the Sultan. And also, they had duties regarding these sacred relics on rotating basis, and the Sultan himself thought that he was a servant of these relics as well. He participated within these duties. He would clean, for example, the cage of the Khirqa-i Saadat, or dust the lamps in the chamber. He would do this himself. Another interesting example is, you can see in this corner, there is a marble well. And this is the entrance of the sacred relics chamber. So in this well, the dust that came out of this chamber when it was cleaned was put, and this shows that the Ottomans couldn't even throw the dust that came out of this chamber. This shows their reverence towards these relics, and by these relics I mean Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his ashab, because they didn't really care about the objects themselves. They cared about what they represented, which was Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and his companions. And this chamber was the Ottoman social-cultural life center. Many ceremonies took place here. The army was sent off from this place. The weddings of the Sultan's daughters would be held here. The irsal lihyas, the shaving of the beard of the Shahzada, the son of the Sultan, would take here. Many ceremonies would take here in this place. And also, we know that sometimes with the the banner of Rasulullah was always taken with them to battle with the Ottoman army. But we know that sometimes the hırka of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was also taken to battle. And here in this miniature painting, you can see the hırka being carried in a golden cage to the Ayri conquest. And one of the most important ceremonies that was held in the palace around these sacred relics was the visits to the Hırka-i Saadet. And this, you see this white shape. This is a handkerchief. It's called destimal. They were given to the visitors. And their chests were also as very important. You can see the chest of Hırka-i Saadet is a piece of art and it's all gold. The most valuable materials were used. And they are very important in regards of the Islamic arts history as well, because as I said, they're like a bridge in Sira, because they connect us to the time of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and they're like a bridge in Islamic arts history because they connect us directly to the early periods of Islamic arts. And we know the reverence given towards these items. So the best artists worked on these cases, and they also, my time is limited, so I will just skip. The Ottomans, they kept some original parts, like the blades and, for example, the bowl in this, but they added new pieces. By this, they changed the originality of the artifact, but they added artistical parts, so they added artistic value to these items.
So what is this?
It's the bowl in which it said Sahl ibn Sa'd offered Prophet Muhammad water in it. And this is, and also they reflected the artistic understanding of their time. This is the artistic understanding of the 16th century. These are details from the source. You can see the 16th century artistic understanding. And this is a very interesting thing. I want to talk about this. The Ottomans are very, very careful in using animal figures in places of worship. But in these relics, they used animal figures. But why did they do this? You can see there's a fish figure on many sources. I think it's to enrich their art with symbolic meanings, to better express the spiritual value of the relics, and to emphasize their claim on the relics. Because now I will explain to you that the fish, it has many meanings, but I want to talk about it. It's in Islamic culture, it's related to Yunus alayhi salam. And when he was in the belly of the fish, he repented to Allah to save him from this difficult situation. And putting a fish on a sword is like saying, "Oh Allah, save me from this difficult situation, which is war." Maybe it's in that meaning. And also there's dragon figures, and this one is Prophet Muhammad ﷺ's sword. And even on that, there's a dragon figure. So the dragon has meanings such as power, authority, and rulership. And this is a political sign as well. And these are also drawings of dragons. And on the Prophet Muhammad's sword, there's cypress trees behind it. And the cypress tree has many meanings. Okay, I'll just continue. In conclusion, for Sira studies, we will benefit for three things if we study the sacred relics. Firstly, it will be easier to visualize what is told in the Sira book, and the daily life of the period will be better understood. Secondly, the traditions developed around these relics will increase the love for Muhammad ﷺ, and it will carry to younger generations. Thirdly, through the sacred relics, a direct connection will be felt to their times and owners. This is their importance regarding the sacred relics. And just I want to say that, as I told you, there were figures and motifs with symbolic meanings were used on these swords. And this is a very neglected subject in regards of arts. And I want to tell you that I think artists should give more importance to this subject, and by doing this, by using these figures, they will open new horizons for themselves, they will fully grasp the Islamic tradition, and by grasping it, they will reflect this traditional accumulation in their works, and also it will facilitate their expression of ibda, creativity. So by this, they themselves will make a contribution to the Islamic tradition. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Khadija. Our next speaker is Dr. Asia Kefalia Donmez. She's a lecturer at the Traditional Turkish Arts Department, Faculty of Art and Design at the Ankara Haji Bayram Veli University. Dr. Asia graduated with a bachelor's and a master's from Mimar Sinan University in Traditional Turkish Arts Illumination. In 2020, she completed the Proficiency in Art, which is a doctorate program at the same university and department, and since then has been teaching at the Ankara Haji Bayram Veli University. She established the Meme Art Studio in Istanbul and in Ankara, and has participated in several architectural projects and exhibitions in Turkey and abroad. The topic of her presentation is the origins and future of Hilye Sharif tradition in Turkish Islamic art. Dr. Asia.
I'm talking about the mind is important, the illumination that this part of illumination is not important as itself as a paper or artwork, but it's important that we do all these artworks because of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. And the art, all of the art has several aspects, but one of them is art and culture, art and economy, art and therapy, art and cultural diplomacy, but most important part of the aspect is Islamic life and divine. And the art has really soft power in Islamic world that we haven't used enough. We haven't used enough for our civilization. The word meaning of Hilye Sharifa, of course, comes from the Arabic word, the Turkish language, and it has a meaning of ornament, ornamented necklace, or beautiful face, image, and appearance. A metaphorical expression of the word means creation, form, state, and beautiful qualities. With the transfer of the word from the metaphor to the level of art and philosophy, the phrase Hilye Sharife began to use. Generally, Hilye Sharife is brought to the last Prophet Muhammad ﷺ in Turkish language, Turkish Islamic culture. It can be read in a book as a ghazal or poem or scene written describes the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. There is also religious songs composed for him. There is a prohibition and depicting people usually no matter how blessed they are in Islam. Because of that, Muslim artists have chosen to transfer to the Prophet, portrait of the last Prophet to the artwork and pages by using the possibility of offered by art and calligraphy and illumination. It's known that thousands of literature art were written until today after the Turks accepted Islam. One of them is, as you know, the Yusuf Haji writes Kutat Kubilik, and he mentioned about his Prophet ﷺ. And as you know, Kasida Burda and Fuzuli Water Kasida also famous. And in this conference, I have noticed many of them that Islamic culture has good literature and powerful, which can be used in a visual art. Art was portable in the time, and when it's when the people settle down, the city had a good life and established their wealth in a wealth, and the art starts changing and converted the framework or books and manuscripts. And it is natural that the Sharife works appeared mainly in Istanbul in the 17th century because of the time of the peak time for everything. And Hediye Şerife tradition has important place in Turkish Islamic art, which has survived the present day, finding itself general methods and style in 17th century. Before the 17th century, there are literary works were handled with the titles such as Sıfat-ı Nebi, Fazayil, in Hadith sans work, and also written under the name of Şemail by making use of other sources. And with this kind of source, especially the Mevlid-i Şerif is very famous and popular, and the people accept it to use in different occasions in Turkey. Because people want to share the feeling with the people when they have happiness or when they have a sadness. And one of the affected writing, we will talk about it, Hakkani Mehmet Bey. His birthday is not clearly known, but we know that his name is Hakkani Mehmet bin Abdülcelil. And we know this information from the Katip Keşf-ü Zunun. This book name is Keşf-ü Zunun. Hakkani Mehmet Bey passed away 17th century, and he worked as a clerk at the Topkapı Palace, and he recorded all the information and conversation from behind the scene. And he has a really good beauty of knowledge and writing that in the palace, and the imperial palace, they wanted to call him Hakkani. The poetic work written by Mehmet Hakkani Bey under the name of Hediye Hakkani in the late 16th century. And in the picture you will see the stone where it is, and also a stone behind the green parts emphasize the Süleyman Çelebi Mevlid-i Şerif. Mehmet Hakkani Bey only had 3 books so far we know. One of them Hediye Hakkani, or we can say Hediye Saadet, or we can say Hediye Şerif. And he has this idea he comes to his mind when he had one of the Mevlid's day, Kandil Day, and he said that what can I give it to Hazreti Muhammad Mustafa when I face the in other world? And he wants to ask Shafa from him, and that day he decided to write Hediye Hakkani. And the Hediye Hakkani is copied several times, and now is available in Turkish manuscript libraries. And also he writes Divan, and he writes Forte Hadith translation. And one of on the left side, you can see one of the copy of his Hediye Hakkani. Most important one is on the right side, which is printed in 2020 and is prepared by İskender Pala and Uğur Berman. What happens with this print? There are also other prints before, but this print is so important. It's happened today because people love the Prophet ﷺ, and they don't want to miss anything, and they want to learn more before listening to others. And they Latinized complete the manuscript, and they took the Turkish language, they converted to today's understanding. It means that as the book is still alive, and people can read and allow him and know about him more. And the other important person for the Hilye Sharifa is the calligrapher Hafız Osman. Hafız Osman lived the 17th century, and he has very talented person, and he had the ijazah when he was 18 years old. And what he had the fame, he imitated the Quran of Sheikh Hamdullah, and he got he reached the level of Fenat Sheikh. And still Turkish calligraphers love him and follow him and imitating his calligraphy. Hafız Osman also was the teacher of Sultan Muhammad II. And one day Sultan Muhammad II told him his ink bottle. And then Sultan said to him, how good you are writing, inshallah you will have a long time, inshallah another one will come in the future like you. And what he answered, he said, if the sultans hold my book in the future, any sultans, many of the Hafız Osman comes. Calligrapher Hafız Osman transferred the text, the narration of Hilye, the art of artwork, to the first time in the late 17th century. And on the right side in the picture, we will see the first one is stone, the other one his signature. And he mostly used muhakkak, sulus, nesif scripts. And this Hilye is one of the first his compositions. And we don't know exactly which one is the first composition, but we know that he started and designed this composition. And another picture from his work. But how he planned this composition, we can see the clearly classical way of Hilye design here. The first part always reads as a basmala, and the second part has a verbal portrait of Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the third part, if it's done as a circle way, if the writing done as a circle way, always crescent stays there, because the crescent has a kind of meaning of Allah. Abjad counting comes to 66. Allah name counting is according to abjad counting comes 66 number. As also the tulip as itself, the abjad counting at the same number. That's why instead of writing Allah name, it's called the complete verbal portrait with the crescent. And 4, 5, 6, 7 areas as always use the khalifas. Sometimes the people use the different informations like the Prophet ﷺ, other name of Ahmed, Mahmud, or Hamid. 8 parts generally stays as ayah. Some of them by the time is changed, by the time they use the same verse of Quran. The 9th part, it depends on the portrait of Salam, but at the same time, they praise sentences stays there, and the calligrapher signatures at the end of this part stays there. Why the calligrapher used this signature under? Because he was afraid of making any mistake. If it's a mistake done, it is his mistake, not the text mistake, not the meaning of it. He wants to emphasize this. And then both sides of 10 and 11 always leaves for the illumination. And the 12th and the 13th as inner seal and outer seal makes the framework for the inside of the geometrical design. And in this case, I will go a little bit further. In 19th century, we have many of the old Hilye Sharifas, but we have some disadvantage of using materials in that time because they fixed the paper on wood that the warmth and humidity changed the condition of the pieces, but some of them left as damage and need the restoration. And what I will show you now, what I did so far in the illumination part, some of them is antique pieces like from Hafız Osman, and I feel that more better than some of my colleagues, that it happens, it's come to me that I will touch it. And what we do, first of all, whenever we want to do any illumination which has the it can be here or a verse of Quran or Hadith, we have to behave in a right way. And generally, we try to have the first wudu. And then we feel and clear our mind to start with. And of course, everything we start with Basmala. It can't be other way of starting. This piece comes from the inside part, and there wasn't any illumination, and according to time being damaged. And I applied the design in Baroque style because of the time that was famous with calligraphy, and calligraphy made the peak in that time, but the illumination affected more European style. And the other picture of it. And the other one is Kazasyan Mustafa İzzet Efendi. This paper came to me without any illumination. Illumination is completely done in this century. And he also used Nesif, Sudus, and a very fine pen. The other one, Mahmud Celaleddin, had a different form of Mini Sharifa, but the text is same, but the composition is different. And another one, the people can't afford that much having the Hilli Sharifa and their home. And some of the companies printed out the original pieces, and we can see and we can analyze some of the words and place easier than ever. And this also fixed on wood. And some details of it. And one of the important point is all the calligraphers and illuminators want to imitate master's pieces. And Bakkal Arif also imitated Mustafa Rakim Efendi, Hilli Sharifa, and used the same planning of calligraphy. Hilli Sharifa, calligrapher almost tells the illuminator what he wants, but the meaning that calligrapher confirms with his writing consecrates with the art of illuminations. Some of the illumination you can see nowadays, you can receive the paper like this. Both sides of the Hilli Sharifa has the same background of calligraphy paper. But what you aim to, what you want to get from the piece, what the kind of effect you want to have it changes the. Okay, I will go quickly. It changes the look. The section is completely changed. And I will go very quickly. Another one, and detail how we work, and some sketching and transferring. And the other one is filing. And you have seen these illuminations in anyway, let's finish. And what I will say last, civilization is not only the art pieces. Anything we use, anything we have inside our emotions. And we kept it, we accepted, and we have the identity of it. This civilization carried on. Otherwise, we can't have identity of any Islamic feelings and behaviors. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Dr. Asia. I'm really sorry, it almost borders on illegitimate to stop such beautiful people from making these beautiful presentations. But we are compelled to follow our program. And our last speaker is Sayyid Jamil. He told me not to introduce him, but I'm sorry. Since Hisham has got a bachelor's in industrial engineering from Toronto Metropolitan University, and he's got an executive MBA. He's been working with Qatar Foundation for the last 10 years and spearheaded several projects. The latest feather in his cap is that he is an extremely important person working for the Digital Seerah project, which Her Highness Maulati Sheikh Moza bin Nasser initiated back in 2017. He spearheaded almost single-handedly the second phase and is a very important component in the third phase of that project. His topic is Seerah in the digital age.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. السلام عليكم. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
أولاً يعني أحب أن أشكر القائمين على هذا المؤتمر ونسأل الله أن يجعله كأثر الفراشة يبدأ بزبدة بسيطة ولكن أثره كبير بإذن الله. وأيضاً أقول يعني كما قال الإمام الشافعي: أحب الصالحين ولست منهم لعلي أنال بهم الشفاعة وأكره من بضاعته المعاصي وإن كنا سواء في البضاعة. فمع حضور أساتذتنا والدكاترة الكرماء أحسب نفسي متطفلا على هذا المجلس، ولكن أفعل ما بقدر الاستطاعة. وإن شاء الله المحاضرة ستكون باللغة الإنجليزية ونسأل الله أن يجعل بها الفائدة. So inshallah, we're going to be talking again, building on some of the work of what's been discussed in the Seerah in a broader context, meaning beyond just the Quran and Sunnah, but that application of it in terms of where we are today. So we're going to be covering in 15 minutes, so I'm going to try and be concise. We're going to be looking at the evolution of the Seerah in the digital landscape. Currently what's out there, benchmarking some of the initiatives, and looking at the Seerah in 2023 and beyond. So where do we go from here? And if we think about what shape Seerah took throughout time, I think it started off, as we know, 1400 years ago, by the message of the Prophet ﷺ, by his even pre his existence ﷺ. But the first format was in an oral format, through the poetry of Hassan ibn Thabit, radiallahu anhu. And then with the evolution, so as the mediums of communication developed, the Seerah was basically accounted for in that medium of communication at the time. So then manuscripts were developed, and this includes some of the work that was discussed of Ibn Ishaq, Ibn Hisham, and so on. And later on, we have the advent of the printing press, and Seerah literature became more accessible through the creation of and printing of books. And finally, we are where we are today in this age of digital transformation. And even in this age of digital transformation, the Seerah needs to and has, there have been attempts in terms of making it accessible. And this is really where we're going to be starting off to look at what's happening in the space and looking at the case study of how we can potentially tackle it. Because I think at the end of the day, the work of all of these scholars that we have today has to be accessible to the layman or to the public as a whole. So most of the work that's been happening relating to the Seerah in terms of in the digital space has been in websites, applications, interactive experiences related to the Seerah of the Prophet ﷺ. I'm going to take you through some examples of one of them, and each of them serve different purposes, and that's what we're going to go through. So the first one was, the one we're going to be sharing now is inspired by Muhammad. This was it was a website that was launched in the UK, and it's still active, and it was meant to target some of, debunking some of the myth and demystifying all of the things that we mentioned today about the role of the Prophet ﷺ, and it was targeting non-Muslims to deal with issues of Islamophobia in the UK, It was a full marketing campaign across the UK to look at issues of what the Prophet ﷺ talked about: social justice, women's rights, protecting the environment, and so on. And it was for all ages. It still remains active, but this was the original inception. Then we have Prophetic Timeline, which was an application where you can kind of browse. It started off in 2012. It had a weapon and app component, but it never really took shape. And this is one of the things that, as we go through the presentation, you'll find that a lot of these initiatives are individually driven. They're based on volunteer basis. So they don't end up getting the impact or the exposure that they need to have, especially in an age where we have a lot of existing content around. This initiative happened actually out of Turkey, the Last Prophet website. It was inaugurated by President Erdogan, and it was a web application, again, with different volunteers. It targeted adults, Muslims, non-Muslims. And it was basically a quasi-database of different content. So digital content, audio content, stuff related to the Seerah, but it was very diverse. There was no specific curation process. And then there are applications targeting adults, but using storytelling. And then with the evolution or other technologies becoming more accessible, such as virtual reality, this was another attempt called Live VR. For some of you that were here around the World Cup, this was one of the initiatives that was used, to give access to a lot of people who were visiting in Mahmoud Center, which used to be called Fanar. Muslim 3D, again, 2017, looked at virtual reality. It was for all ages, for Muslims. Again, it's an attempt of bringing access to the Seerah using storytelling and a lot of interactive engagement in the Seerah app. Here we have another initiative which was targeting children. It's a web application called Seerah for Kids out of Turkey, so very appropriate with my panel here. And it had different interaction modules that you can use about the character of the Prophet ﷺ, about the Hadith, different chronology of what happened throughout the Seerah. Another one is in the footsteps of the Prophet, which happened in 2017, still remains active, and it's in multiple languages. Then there's a Seerah site, and the final one I'll share here is Rasulullah.net. So as you can see, each one of these websites has a different offering, and that offering is essentially whatever the founders decided to establish, so either have an intervention for a specific demographic that they felt would make it accessible, but again, they use different models of making it accessible. So some are more interactive, some are more static, looking at data and so on. A hybrid, some of the hybrid activities or some of the exhibitions that kind of also continue to look at the Seerah today with some digital attempts is the Museum of the Prophets Biography and Islamic Civilization. If you have been to Medina recently, it's right outside of Haram al-Nabawi Sharif, and it has a hybrid model. So there are physical representation and models, but there are also digital interaction. So you can actually go in the gallery about the women in Islam. You can go and click and see some of the work that's there. And again, we obviously have Topkapi Palace, which was shared. It's not as digital, but I know they're looking at, I think some of the online stuff gives you some access to it. There was an exhibition called The Ascension of the Prophet, alayhi salatu wassalam. And then another exhibition, I believe in Turkey, Love for the Prophet exhibit. So again, when you look at a lot of these initiatives that are there, whether the exhibitions or the app, a lot of them are to a certain extent, I'd say static. So meaning the audience that they're targeting in some instances might be children, might be adults, but it doesn't really allow, in a lot of cases, for a personalized journey that's well curated through the whole experience. Meaning, if you look at some of the gamification of content today, when you come and use certain video games, there's a certain level of psychological understanding of children in terms of getting them interested in this. So, and this is one of the things that we need to be looking at in terms of making the Seerah accessible. So looking at the different mediums, whether they're website, applications, exhibitions, or 3D, pass through this. We did an assessment to see what are the critical things when it comes to technology based on the learned lessons. So a lot of organizations or individuals that have established and worked on these initiatives have been providing or paving the way for us to be able to get some learned lessons about how people are interacting with the Seerah. So for these dots essentially represent some of the projects before, and being able to understand the audience, because according to the audience that you're trying to deliver for, the content has to be curated accordingly. So if you're representing it for children, it's very different than if you're doing it for adults, if you're doing it for Muslims versus non-Muslims. All of these things need to be taken into account. Are they young or old? The navigation, does it matter how complex it is? Is it academic? Is it for the community? Is it static or interactive? Low engagement or high engagement? And is it for a local audience or a global audience? Because that does make a difference. So if you look, for example, in the States where, let's say, the Muslim community is a minority, the requirements might be very different than maybe in a place like Qatar, where it's part of, can be incorporated into curriculum and other things. And as you can see from the timeline, this is one of the assessments we looked at, because there is a challenge of continuity. So initiatives get started, they get developed, implemented, but then they stop. And when it comes to digital content, content is king, as they say. So we have to continuously ensure that there's content that's produced there. So our key findings from the assessment, that the quality of the content, again in terms of engagement or design, for the most part it was mediocre or good at best. That there was nothing excellent, nothing with the ihsan in terms of the quality that's out there. The global reach, it's mainly in English, believe it or not. So a lot of the content is in English, the interactive content. What's in Arabic is limited and requires a lot of effort to kind of make it accessible. And it caters, most of it caters to non-Muslims for a lot of these initiatives. And the mediums have evolved. So from websites, it has gone into AR, VR, as technology becomes better and better. So the challenges that other solution providers have, whether Islamic or not with the technology, still exists when it comes to the Seerah. And what was noticeable that there is a lack of access of projects for 16 to 18-year-olds. So it's mostly for adults. And I think, obviously you mentioned these conferences are important, but how do we address the youth that are in the schools, the public, who we know that don't have continuous access to content related to the Seerah. Some of the features that can be used with augmented reality, virtual reality, really allow for a very interactive experience. So we can harness this technology to really serve what we're trying to achieve. Video content still remains to be a very accessible way, because it can be shared and it can become viral, and it becomes accessible to different age groups. But again, these are all different forms of technology that can be used. So where do we go from here, 2023 and beyond? I think there has to be a very intentional process of how we develop for the audience, with asking certain questions. Who are we doing this for? Why are we doing it? And what are we trying to achieve as an objective? And I think one of the things, imagine a world where we can have a Wikipedia or a Google where the whole thing is about the Seerah of the Prophet ﷺ. So whether you want to get curriculum, or you want to get videos, or you want to get poetry, you are able to access it through one platform with the purpose of educating the world, countering misconceptions, and reviving the prophetic model. So for us, it's not entertainment. It's as Sheikhna Mahmoud mentioned, this is part of our aqidah, the love of the Prophet ﷺ. So being able to use these tools to be able to get our children and ourselves closer. And just some general stats, I'm not going to get into it. Most of the generation, if we talk about Generation Z, which is from born 1995 onwards, they spend 5 or more hours. So 55% of them spend 5 or more hours on the phone, and 26% of them use their phones 10 hours or more. So we know that this is a reality. Even it might not be an ideal reality, but we have to meet people where they are. But again, making sure that technology is independent of values, let's assume. Obviously, it has its own ethical implications, but making sure that when we're designing, we're not actually creating something that's going to promote digital addiction, but something that will hopefully nudge them towards being connected to the tradition. And again, looking at these different user-friendly formats, and basically creating a framework around the different things that we mentioned. And finally, I'm not going to get into it, but this is maybe a visual of how we potentially can have the Seerah, as we mentioned. And the last slide, I think this is one of the sayings, it's attributed to Imam Ali, I don't know if it's true or not, but I think there's wisdom in it. So teaching our kids for a time that's different than ours. And in order for us to offer and develop something that is effective, it has to be a concerted effort. We need creative designers, we need communication experts, we need psychologists, we need educators, tech experts, and of course, very importantly, scholars, to make sure that it's grounded in the tradition, and entrepreneurs as well, to invest in this technology for it to be scalable and not to be one of. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Sir Hisham. Unfortunately, we're running out of time because it will be over prayer in a few minutes. But with the time that we have remaining on our hands, I will request people to, we will not be able to take more than 2 to 3 questions, but please be very, very brief and to the point, and let us know who exactly in the panel are you asking so that we go ahead. Thank you very much.
أخت خديجة جزاكم الله خير جميعا طبعا. ما أدري تعرف اللغة العربية؟
نعم أفهم.
أوكي. ما مدى صحة وجود هذه الآثار والأمانات في إسطنبول بالذات في المصحف العثماني؟
Can I answer in English?
Okay.
Okay. Yani, the certainty of it, I haven't been I didn't study the certainty of this mushaf, because I know there are many mushafs that are attributed to Uthman radiallahu anh. I put it there how it is presented in the museum. But I think this was another idea of mine that I couldn't mention. We have newer technologies right now, so with DNA tests and carbon tests, I think we can prove if they belong to Uthman radiallahu anh. But according to other relics, there are other studies on the swords. We can be more certain that, for example, this sword belongs to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but they're not like the hadith. They don't have a silsila, so the certainty is not that as strong as the hadith.
السلام عليكم. بالنسبة للمصحف نسخة المصحف الموجودة أتوا لنا بكوب منها في مركزنا وناقشناهم وأثبتنا أنها متأخرة عن عهد سيدنا عثمان بين 100 و 150 سنة وأقروا بذلك. يعني كان جاء الأستاذ رئيس مدير إرسيكا نسيت اسمه خالد أران. نعم دكتور خالد أران جاء وقلت لهم هذا في نقط في ألوان في خطوط مستقيمة ولم تكن هذه هي الكتابة زمن سيدنا عثمان رضي الله تعالى عنه وارضاه، كانت غير مستقيمة غير مضبوطة كذا. فقالوا نعم نحن يعني راجعنا أنفسنا في هذا وهذه النسخة مكتوبة بعد ذلك بنحو 100 سنة. فيعني it is not authentic at all, I think.
Yes, as I said, I put it as it was presented in the museum, and that's why I'm saying that there should be more studies on these relics. If they're like authentic, if they're not authentic, and DNA tests, carbon tests. I like the Topkapı Palace are now dealing with digitalization of these relics, but I think there should be more studies on them, both in regards of Sira and in laboratories and in artistic regards. They are very neglected, and as I said, I worked on the swords, but I couldn't study them all, and even on the swords, I couldn't do a DNA test or a carbon test, so inshallah one day we will study on them more.
I think the professor wants to say we should look at the authenticity of these materials,
of course.
All of it.
Of course.
Yeah, barakallah.
Yes, thank you very much for your interesting presentations. And of course, we live in a modern age and a digital age, as we've learned. But you know, sometimes technology, when it comes to the sacred and to reverence, it can present maybe a challenge that we don't want to go there. For example, this question about the DNA. If you went around and analyzed all the beard hairs that are revered in different cultures to see if they shared the same DNA, I think it would actually be damaging to that sense of the sacred, and it would be better to leave it as a matter of piety, which of course there's always that tension, right? So we have the tension of all of your presentations, the digital stuff. How do you avoid depicting too much? Like, are you depicting one of the Sahaba? Maybe we shouldn't do that. Maybe we shouldn't have pictures of living things at all. So then how do you show anything? So perhaps you could address those questions. And I can't resist also, Dr. Asia, it made me think of that Hilia. You know how you have paint by numbers? So you could have like an app or a paint by number kit where you had the calligraphy and each Muslim could learn, you know, illumination and participate. So there's a tension, I want to say, between participation and publicizing and joining, and that's sort of the sacred boundary that we don't transgress.
Thank you, Professor. That will be the last question, please.
Assalamu alaikum. This is to address sorry, Hisham. Because as a new Muslim, I've been going through these digital things, and so I'm just wondering if there are organizational bodies that are looking into if they are authentic, or I'm not sure, because for the Sierra, like for example, I will go to an app, so I will just believe that this is authentic. So I'm just wondering if there are bodies that will to take a look into these things.
Jazakallah khair for the question. I mean, the baton now is passed on to College of Islamic Studies, inshallah, to help with achieving that. I think similar to what we've been learning throughout the conference, the same way we had the challenges with Ibn Ishaq and Ibn Hisham, are they authentic, are they not authentic? The challenges will continue, and to the professor's point, I think technology, similar to everything, is a tool, and we can choose. It doesn't have to happen to us, so we're the ones who opt in to use it and when to use it. As the saying goes, إن هذا العلم دين فلينظر أحدكم عمن يأخذ أمور دينه. So I think there is a vigilance and responsibility to make sure, Allah give you tawfiq, obviously as a young Muslim, and have the support with the right people. That's why I think it cannot be devoid of scholars being there, but scholars were always part of the community. So I don't know if I answered your question, but I think we can't shy away from it because الطبيعة لا تحب الفراغ. So that there is a gap. If there's a gap in nature, it will get filled by something. So we need to provide that content, but we have to choose when to dip in and dip out to bring us back to the tradition.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank all the panelists here and the audience. We are sorry we're running out of time once again. Our next session was supposed to start at 12:30, so we've got a prayer break right now. But with the permission of دكتورة عائشة ممكن نؤخره ب10 دقائق يعني حيث يبدأ الجلسة الأخيرة الساعة 12.
12:30 ليش؟
10 ماشي.
يروحوا يصلون
تمام خلاص. So inshallah we move according to our plan, and the next and last session, the closing session will start at 12:30 inshallah. Thank you very much.
شكرا جزيلا